evaluate the overall effectiveness of selected systems, both monetarily and ecologically, and report to council. I mean, to there, it should be and make recommendations to council.
It should be make recommendations
yeah.
to on everything.
Yeah, so I don't know whether, so maybe the top
sort of
part
redundant.
should be committee's deliverables are to make recommendations to council on, but that doesn't quite match the verbs of search out and examine, so. I mean, I don't have a problem with them doing all of this, I just have a problem with what
wording.
council means, yeah.
Well, if we replace report to council with make recommendations to council throughout.
I think that probably works.
Yeah.
So for every report, take that out and put in, make recommendations.
Yeah,
That's sensible.
In the report.
well, you've gotta do the report to make the recommendation.
It's semantics, guys.
Report means two things, recommendations for action, or here's what we did. Information.
I think make recommendations. Anything further?
No, that was it.
Tim?
I move that council adopt the terms of reference for the solid waste resource management advisory committee as
President.
amended.
Second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any further questions? All those in favor? Thank you. Unanimous. Again, thank you, Don. Thank you,
Casey, would you make sure I get a copy of that,
We'll look at the
changes
changes.
to the deal?
Yeah. Are we on to the?
Yes. I would ask actually that council receive for information, the minutes as outlined in section 9 of the May 14th, 2012 regular council agenda. That's a number of sets of minutes.
I just want to speak to one item.
Yes.
But can I do that after we've adopted it?
Yep.
Oh, thank you.
I need to move her if
Second.
It's really not totally related to the minutes, but well, I guess it is. The commissioner issued a report on the review of the Coastal Ferry Act in January. And the minister last week released a press release and tabled draft legislation in the House.
So,
And interestingly, the number on the bill is 4 or 5 numbers in advance of the number on the bill to do with TransLink. And the Ferry Act bill was presented 2 days later. So I just thought that was just an interesting curiosity. The bill doesn't, he at least recognized, they put in a definition of ferry users. I had all this with me, where is it? Which is good, because it defines ferry users as ferry passengers and their families, communities serviced by ferries, and businesses that rely on or utilize ferry services. Then there was a whole bunch of tinkering done with sections 42 and 43, which talk about being able to change service levels. It's not really clear whether the contract's going to get changed and just how all this is going to unfold, and I'll know more after a couple of conference calls that are happening this week. But there's a couple of key quotes in the press release that are, government's vision is to connect coastal communities in an affordable, efficient, and sustainable manner. So that's nice motherhood words, but what do they mean? The other things are BC ferries will need to find efficiencies to reduce operating costs. So most of us have realized there's not a lot of efficiencies other than reducing service levels.
they talk about that in the TransLink as well.
Yeah, the next one is there will be significant adjustments to service levels and discussions with communities about trade-offs among service adjustments, fare increases, and potential community contributions. And the government will seek public input to develop strategies, and I underline strategies, to support a vision for connecting coastal communities. So obviously the vision's been decided how they're gonna do it. And then the other change that they put into the legislation is innovative and effective operations. And so in the press release, they use the word allowing for alternative methods to connect coastal communities, such as passenger-only ferries and other service improvements. And it's very noticeable by its absence that they didn't make any mention of bridges. And there's a couple of areas where bridges would be fairly effective. The commissioner's given some more flexibility to determine the revenue needed, but he hasn't given any flexibility to set what the government has to pay. And they're talking about use measures other than fare increases to respond to extraordinary situations. And so all through the legislation it uses this word extraordinary situations. So the question is, are we in an extraordinary situation? So stay tuned, more to come.
So has this bill passed? I don't
Oh
think
no,
so.
it's just got first reading,
Mhm.
but it'll get passed. And I guess and they put in another $79 million, but that's spread out over 5 years, 25 of which is for last year. Now, they made this announcement in May. The fiscal year end of last year was March 31st. So whether they actually gave the government, or the BC Ferries, a check before March 31st, and they waited till now to make the announcement, I don't know.
That makes sense if they would.
Because I don't know how you retroactively put something. Anyhow, it's going to be, it'll be interesting to see just how the intent of this.
I mean, one of the things that has to happen is that the fare system at present between Bowen and the mainland, it has to be regularized. Like you can't have visitors coming here paying 40% or 45% more than we do, because you want them to come.
Well, that's a whole discussion, because
No, I know.
the whole fleet has this idea of the experience card, and that's history that goes back years ago. And the idea is that the people that live on the islands and are residents get a break in their fares. So you set one tariff and you get an experience card, which enables you to get the break in your fares if you're a regular user. Unlike, sort of like TransLink, where if you buy a monthly pass, you get a lower rate.
No, but I think maybe you're missing the point. What I'm saying is that shortly we're going to be talking about formation of an economic development select committee. And I really feel that one of the things to get people over to this island is try not to rip them off, just to come over.
And the ferry advisory committees have been making that point throughout for all the routes, that it's cost prohibitive to get to the islands, and if you're a tourist especially. But it's also cost prohibitive for the residents, and they're already getting a break. And interestingly, the traffic has dropped on all the routes, except for ours. Ours is sort of held a slight increase or flat, basically. So a lot of the concern that the reason the traffic has dropped is because of the fares. But the problem is actually just proving that, because the traffic started to drop along with the global economic crisis and the price of fuel going up. So you've got these three external things. And part of my premise is maybe we're getting more people coming over here because A, it's cheaper to go to here than it is to go to Seashell if you want to go out, take a boat ride for a day. And we got a lot of free publicity with CRC and the national park, which made people maybe want to come over here. So all of these things are going to get looked at, and the ferry advisory committees have been saying to the province that you want economic development on the islands, and it's not just the residents, and the ferry fares are killing that from a tourism perspective. And the other feeling we've had is that Leckstrom is very, very receptive to the issues, and he I think he went to bat, but there's not a lot of necessarily sympathy for ferry cost issues in the rest of cabinet.
I wonder, because he supposedly went to bat for TransLink, and
well, none of the coastal communities, including Vancouver Island, has ever voted Liberal.
Yes. We have a liberal MLA.
Yes, but have we liberal votes? The liberals have not one vote on it.
Oh, I see what you're getting at, yeah.
So,
but I don't
From
think
what we
elected
have-
areas, yeah.
unless we have a different government which feels more loyal to the coastal communities, we will get short-shifted.
Well, I don't wanna get into that.
I'm not promoting
political-
outright
Well,
not
that's
to the
a-
NEP, but
That's a
that
political
is,
debate
Back to
that,
2020.
but that
Yeah, we
is,
can go all night on
but
that.
just to
Yeah.
clarify, the mess we got into with the fast ferries and the lack of maintenance of the fleet was under a different government. End of story, yeah.
I've had some, I was at an Islands Trust committee meeting on Friday, and there was a lot of discussion about this, and when you parse through the information that's been released on this, I feel, and a lot of people that have read this feel that it's a good news story.
Oh, it is good.
And that should really be said loud and clear. The paring back of service is not necessarily a bad thing, because it will make the company more financially sound. It will deal with issues like the Powell River run, which has a ferry that's bigger than ours, and some of the runs like have 3 cars on them. You know, so it's that kind of waste that they're going to be dealing with. They're also going to be allowing cross subsidization on routes, so it won't routes won't be like siloed the way they are now. So they will be able to make some clever adjustments where they can reallocate money in order to make efficiencies that they would otherwise be able to do. So there's been some really out of the box thinking on this, on a lot of the decisions, and it seems to have political buy-in. So you know, I really don't think we should be looking too dimly on this.
Well, I wasn't saying dimly, it's just it's a lot of we don't know what it means. And we're probably in a much better position than some of the other routes who are, you know, who will probably face more service cuts. Or
Yeah.
we will.
I was just gonna say, you
Yeah.
know, this morning, there was an overload on the 8:30 ferry leaving here. Like, well, at least half the way up the hill.
27 cars.
Was it 27 cars? I mean, it's pitiful. Sorry.
as long as ferries are not considered an extension of the highway system, it will never change.
No.
If the citizens of Prince George, Prince Rupert, anybody, let's say north of Hope, would have to pay the true cost of maintaining the highway system, well, then it would cost them probably $250 to get to Prince George.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fundamentally wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
Especially
no matter how
if
you call this good news, I call it not good news. It's just a cynical disrespect for the coastal communities.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be political or not, it may be ignorance, but it's short-sighted, cynical, and
We're not in disagreement.
okay,
I
short
don't
from starting a revolution, and maybe that's the
And the other
What a
interesting,
progressive council we are.
the other interesting thing about the removal of the cross subsidization, which I didn't read out of the press release, what's removed is cross subsidization between the designated routes and the non-designated routes. And the non-designated routes are the major routes to Victoria and Nanaimo and Newport. And those routes right now aren't making money.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no extra money to come from them to pop up.
Is there anything further that people want to say on that topic,
I just wanted to.
Okay, so
Raise
we're
it.
on to the next thing.
We do just have that resolution moved and seconded to receive for information.
Thank you. Any further comments? No? All those in favor? Thank you.
And our next item of business, Councillor Rhodes, reformation of an economic development select committee.
Well, I'm just gonna read some notes I wrote out here prior to making the motion. The first point of the Bowen Island Municipal Mission Statement states that the municipality work toward conducting operations in a way that improves the economic, environmental, and social well-being for present and future generations. And economic and social well-being have taken a back seat to the environment on Bowen to the point where we have a stagnant economy and inadequate housing for some segments of our community. Economic development is arguably the most important task in front of us if we want a sustainable, viable community. Looking to the future, as we were just talking about rising gasoline prices and rising ferry fees, it becomes increasingly important to have an economy that provides a diversity of employment across the socio-economic spectrum. The social diversity we want will only be sustainable if we have employment diversity. It's time to give some serious thought to the kinds of green businesses appropriate to Bowen Island and to create an economic development work plan that will identify and attract these businesses. That said, I would move that whereas economic development on Bowen Island is critical to the health of many Bowen businesses and to maintaining a population with socio-economic diversity, be it resolved that Council create an economic development select committee of Council and that staff be directed to prepare terms of reference for Council's review at a future meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you.